That's filming. I'll keep that open. There we go. What's your favourite way to ride at the moment? Is it flat water, smooth winds, hitting sliders, hitting wave kickers, or mega looping?
I'm actually kind of getting to the point where I'm done with flat water. I think I've done so many times where you go to a flat water spot, and I find that unless it's really warm and like the optimum 20 miles an hour, I'm not as motivated to go and try and learn something. I think flat water is brilliant when you're working to achieve something. So if I go to a flat water spot now, I'll go out, ride, do my repertoire, and then in half an hour I'll be like, right, that's that. Then try the things that I can't do them wrong, and then be kind of over it a bit. So I think more than anything, the big wins are more natural, I suppose, to enjoy, and the waves are interesting like that. I'm starting to lean a bit towards wave riding. I haven't got a surfboard yet, but I'm enjoying that even on my bindings board.
Slashing them up.
Yeah, I enjoy terrain, you know, I like to navigate around the ocean, so flat water is limited, sort of half an hour max, until I'm sort of right on something else to do.
Yeah. So you're kind of at the peak of freestyle, so when did you last learn a new trick?
Actually this year, which is good. Like, that's my goal. If I can learn one trick a year now, I'll take that for the rest of my life. That'll be a good vocabulary in 50 years time. Like, I learned a front line over to hillside in Tarifa. I haven't done one for about 4 months now, but I learned that when I was there last, and that was nice. Because I think that the hard part of karting for some time is if you haven't learnt the moves you want to do right, you've learnt them wrong, and it's hard to change that muscle memory to stop yourself doing them wrong. So to overcome that takes a lot of work and effort to be bothered to change the way you're thinking. So that's why one trick a year now. I'm happy with that. Everything that I can't do might well stay like that, but if I could change one of them things a year, it's good.
Yeah. I haven't landed a front roll to blind since November.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just getting annoying. It's like
yeah, when it gets like that, it starts to become a block as well. Like, you start thinking you can't do it, and
yeah. How do you find the local conditions for learning new tricks?
I actually find the local conditions quite difficult. It's about going to the right places at the right tide times to really want to develop around this area. I think the strong wind stuff is good because it's
the mega loops.
The wind's the right strength and punchiness to.
You're sponsored for free riding, aren't you? And commentating and just
that's probably worth mentioning, that now that I've started to do a lot more commentating and presenting and program with schools and things like that, it's not, I would say I was sponsored as just a kiteboarder now to compete in events. Or I do the big air event in the King of the Air every year, and this year I did a border cross event, which is something I'd like to start doing more of. That's good fun.
Yeah. But
generally speaking, you're sponsored to get exposure for a brand. So however you do that, it's up to you. And I've learnt over the last sort of 5 years that it doesn't just have to be competing straightforward on a tour, which can be quite difficult. And for me, actually, at some points, took the passion away from kiteboarding, where I would go kiting in horrible conditions because I felt I had to perform all the tricks and the routine, and I wouldn't be so much into it. So to have kiting as sort of, for me again, has been brilliant. The high wind stuff I think you enjoy naturally anyway, so the King of the Air event isn't something I think you have to go and train for crazy amounts. You know, you should be passionate about riding in them conditions, but it has been awesome to go and pick and choose when I want to ride and not have the pressure of maybe paying next month rent directly as a result of your competition result.
Yeah. How do you learn a freestyle trick? Where do you...
I think...
how do you go about it?
I think before even approaching to learn a new freestyle trick, the one thing that most people tend to have is a background of sort of aerial awareness and trampolines or diving boards or bouncy castles, anything like that. Most people that get seriously into kiting and starting to unhook and do all the freestyle moves have got some good awareness about where they are, but I think the best way to learn a move is actually to, sounds a bit cliche, but is watch a video. Watching videos is absolutely essential to understand how the move goes. I think there's two stages to learning the trick. There's learning it as far as understanding how it's working, and then actually there's going to put that into practice. The tricks I can't do, I understand them in my head, you know, like, but I can't translate it to my physical body. So I think that's definitely the right way to do it.
And what was the first handle pass you learned?
The first handle pass I learned was, well, it was the straight up one originally.
Angle pass.
Yeah, the dangle pass. And
Yeah.
they used to be epic at the time they came in. It was like I actually got into kiteboarding at a really interesting time where board offs were just fading out, and I just got into them.
Did you have trouble breaking gear when you were learning wake style moves?
I did a bit, but I don't think that was down to being too physical with it, or it was more that the kit wasn't ready. Like the boards were constructed from fiberglass and some sort of, you know, carbon mould, and they were light. They were made to be light and that you could take off by hand. So the crossover between board offs and wake style, a lot of it wasn't just my gear. I think a lot of people had problems with breaking boards that weren't strong enough to take the hard landings and things. So to some degree, yeah, I've never really had a problem breaking kites. I think that takes quite an impact to break a kite, you know. I've never had a consistent problem with boards a little bit to start with, but nowadays it's very rare that I break anything now, really.
Yeah. As you got into wake style, were you riding newer kites? Were you sponsored at that time riding brand new gear, or were you still riding used gear?
I was sponsored when I started unhooking. Was about the point I got sponsored, I suppose. It was a couple of years. It was about a year into kiting, I think. But what was lucky in a way when I got into kiteboarding is that most of the people in it were 30 plus that could afford the gear. It was quite a new sport, so the British champion was 35 or 38, and then there was a couple of us that sort of under 20 that got into it, adapted to all the moves, and the sport was changing from the big air and front rolls and things, which I found really easy to start with because I'd spent so much time down the diving boards where you have 1 second to learn everything, and then you have 6, 7 seconds. That stuff was easy to adapt to, and then when the new unhooking stuff came in, I was really keen to get into that. So just at that point, I joined RRD in 2004, 2005, somewhere around there, and I had sea kites, which was essential really. But back then, really, there wasn't really any SLEs or anything around, so I think that helped actually, having just pure sea kites to learn on. I did do cable a lot actually in the early days. I did see a crossover between there, certainly with the early stages of wake style with the Rayleigh to blind, and even just the Rayleigh. It wasn't until I learned it properly at the cable that I felt I could really do a good Rayleigh on the kite. Like there's a lot of crossovers now. Now I find that if I can do it on the water, I can almost probably do it at the cable because of the consistency of the way the water is. Like never used to be like that. It used to be the hardest place to do it, and now it's changed around a bit. I understand the pool a bit more.
How do you cope with the terrible sessions you have in kiting? I guess you still have them, but not as often.
I think I think you have to have those bad sessions, like, to appreciate the good ones. I suppose that's the general outlook of that, and they do get bad, you know, where you break all your lines, or you know, you can't do anything, and the wind dies. Like effectively that's the beauty of the sport, that you can't just turn up and get the best day ever. I look at a positive on the bad days now, that they're out of the way, you know, like you're going to have so many of them a year, and that if you have a real bad one, the next session will always be better. Like it can't, you know, when you've had a really, really bad one, you know, that's kind of like the worst it can get. So it's amazing how emotionally that affects you, having a bad session, in your mood and how you are with everything in life. But in the same way, you can feel on top of the world when you have a great session too. But I haven't really been kiting much for a while. It feels like a long time since I've kited every day of the week. I kite surfed yesterday for an hour at the Birdman event, and then today's looking good. I might pop down there to kite a bit later on, but I haven't been so motivated lately because the weather's 15 knots, 18 knots, choppy sea, all those things. It's hard to get motivated sometimes, but then on other days you can do a full week because you may have learned something. That's the key, I think, is But
Yeah.
you learn something, you want to be there every single day.
Yeah. So what, when you go out in your next session, are you gonna, or are you aiming to learn a new trick at the moment, or are you just having as much fun as possible? Or if the conditions are right, will you go, I want to learn this?
I think when you haven't been kiting for a period of time, and typically that's how it works with kiting, is that it's not always you've been out for 3 or 4 days beforehand, and unless you're somewhere really consistent. Cape Town's a bit like that, but for now, and I think this is apparent with most kiters, you just want to achieve the things you can do already. That's a good day. If you can do all the things you've ever been able to do, that's a good day. But wake style can be a bit routine like that. You go through the ones you want to do. You can be affected by someone getting in the way in the good spot for the wake style, even though they don't know, it's not their fault at all. But you're trying to do your wake style stuff. So I try not to get too involved with that now and just throw a trick here, there, and everywhere. But you do want to not tick off the list. It's only then you really feel like, right, now I should be trying to do something I can't. When you've done all the things you can do, that's probably the difference between a good and a bad day for me. Certainly in places where it's 20 knots and it's more of a wake style place, if I can't go out and do all the things I can do, I like to think that if you can do the 4 key moves in a session, you've had a great day. So it's a mobe, a front blind mobe, a KGB, which I've never landed actually. I only ever seem to do back to blinds and air pass. I've never landed a KGB, and a slim. If you can do all 4 of them in a session, that's a great session. Like I've done all 4 of them, so I've never been amazing at. I suppose I've never really cared about consistency and sort of in a way that's been like, I've done that all right. I'd rather do the best possible one ever done. So I don't mind trying something like a front blind mode and doing one of them in, if it's really windy on a 7. I like to do stuff on a 7 and a 6.
Yeah.
If you can do stuff on a 7 and a 6 in 30, 40 knots, like you really understand the tension and where the kite should be. So you might even do 1 or 2 of those in a session like that. It might be like the best ones ever. So that's a better. I think that's a better feeling. Only the top 3 guys get exposure on the world tour. If you finished a great result, I'd love to finish. I've never finished better than 9th, and that's when you get paid up to 9th or 10th, but it goes up to 9. And if you're finishing 5th and 6th, you're never really getting enough money to even cover the trip. Like it's not quite. Sponsorship's not really up there enough yet to really earn a good living unless you're top 3 in it. But big air, like anyone can do well in them events that's got an experience of big air, especially if you live in this country where it's like those are the conditions. Like when it was very apparent when I started competing in the King of the Air in Cape Town that not many other countries are used to that sort of wind. Like the guys from Cape Town are pretty good, some of them. The Dutch guys are always very good, but most of the other countries, if they're not around our area, like France and Germany gets a good breeze, they're not really ever exposed to that force of wind, like you already have it in you to ride 6s and 7s, and once kiting comes in your life, you sort of always like, I can go kiting. Like in any situation, you're like, I can get out of this and go kiting.
I was going to go to university, study economics, and go work in the city.
Okay, that will change.
Yeah, that will change things. Yeah. I was going to say something, but